well, it started expanding, but all of this was actually possible because someone decided to talk and said, you should go arrest this person, this person, this person, and from that moment then we start following them and manage to get all of this. But when you actually read the arrest warrant, none of this is clear because they basically, and sometimes it's actually bad and good or good if you're a lawyer defending, they tell you, well, we arrested this person because he was told by our confidant that he was a member of the organization, and we see that he's the cousin of this person and the family member of his father, and he goes to the same bar of these very famous members, so he might have some connections. Then sometimes he confessed, so I included him or excluded him when it was proven that actually he had nothing to do with that. And one of the things you can see here is that this is a low density network, so most of the people here have one or two connections within the organization, and this is also, this reflects the code of ethics of mafia members that we say you have to know what the left and right are doing, but you do not have to worry about the rest. And and this is connected to something I wanted to show you. I'm not sure if it will work. It is basically members within the organization, so we kind of know who the boss of their boss is, and I wanted to know if it was possible to trace back who are really growing the organization. So I created a probit model that is in an economic model, and checked how basically all the variables together, and you have basically higher chances to be a boss if you get older, but not that much. It's just because, well, you have not been killed or arrested before, so there are few people. But definitely it is quite important if you're being quite active in your past in the organization, or if you have more connections through families, because as I said before, mafia members are just quite connected with 2-3 members of the organization. But as I said, the more connected mafiosi are not on the article parts of the organization. This is so because a theory I believe applies here, that is the secrecy security issue, which means how much can you tell a member within your organization of the organization itself. The less you tell them, the more secure the organization is, but the less efficient its work will be. So if anyone knows anything about the organization, the organization will run extremely efficient. But the moment one of these members is arrested, it can reveal everything about the organization. This is the problem that actually mafia experienced in 1993 when Buscetta, this guy, was arrested, and he revealed, as he was in the article position, revealed everything about the organization. While now, if you arrest somewhere in a marginal farm, can reveal basically his left and right members, but really not everyone else. And after I built the social network, I tried to, sorry, of course it didn't work.
What you want to do?
Click on this and it happens an amazing.
Oh, so it's a link?
It's an hyperlink, yes.
Let me do it.
It but I put the network in the map of my hometown. Why so? Because this is where I could actually compare all the features together, and I use basically data from the census, data.
That's okay?
Yes, from the trial itself, and what you can see. Sorry if I show you a little bit. I'm talking a little bit longer than what I was expecting, but I started just placing them here in my hometown where they were living, and then I checked how they were connected, and you can see that darker areas are basically signal that members have had more than one connection between them. Others do not have any connection, but just because I decided to take the limit this research to the town borders, otherwise it was.
How big is the city? How many people in more or less?
More or less 500,000.
500,000.
Yes, 500,000 people. So there are not that many, but there are areas where there was a higher concentration.
That's a mafia for 500,000.
Definitely, and as you can go down, there are areas. For example, I'm originally from this area, and well, there are quite few people, but it's more about the connection. It looks more intricate here. What you can see as well is that, sorry, okay, I basically collected a census for the town and added it to the features of every mafia member, and it goes down to the single building, which I found quite interesting because, well, of course they won't tell you, the mafiosi cannot tell you anything about the rest of their lives during the investigation, but then you can get so many older features about the building where, for example, they were living. It was about, for example, their family or two families maximum, so you could put it down quite precisely, and I checked it with other variables such as, for example, unemployment, and you could see that actually where the majority of them is based where unemployment is actually not that high, which I find quite interesting, and for example, also while it is significant for the education in the sense that where education is lower, you have a higher concentration of mafiosi. And just to continue on this, from that result I just have abstracted a couple of ideas, which are, sorry, I'm just out of time.
Take your time. It's okay. We can take a break and then we can continue. Do you want to stop now?
No. I mean,
okay.
I'm almost through with my conclusions. Basically, from looking at the mafia organization here, I noticed that there are soldiers with very few connections, highly connected mid-level members, and then the other organization that's again have very few connections, which I find quite interesting. And one thing I noticed is that police operations in Italy either focus here, in the Azure or either organization, or here, and there's not really many investigation that started at least with the middle-level members, which I think that is maybe where police forces should focus their efforts, and this basically and the main conclusion of my PhD.
So when you say mid-level, you talk about this, that guy that you go to talk to about just on the motorcycle.
Yes.
Yeah, so everyone knows who he is, all the police know who he is, and they sort of start an investigation with him. Is that?
Well, they should start, that's my point, they should start from them, but they actually go for, say, the guy on the road that sells drugs, or they aim directly for the big head of the organization, because this has been reviewed, but never like this mid gray area. One other problem is that I did this this trial was about the mafia that was trying to recreate the cupola after the 90s mafia war. What happened is that they arrested everyone. So after a couple of years, they tried to create the cupola again, and they have been arrested because basically the same members, some of them managed to go out of prison because the trial lasted this long that they had to release them as well. Our procedure code works in that way because it would be unfair. Sometimes in the unfortunate trial lasts on average between 6 and 8 years, so it's quite an enormous amount of time to keep someone in prison without a sentence. And they try to recreate the cupola again, were arrested, and now we are about the 4th time they try to recreate a cupola. But the problem is this time we don't know who they have elected, so no one actually knows who is running the organization at the moment, because they arrested everyone and now there's someone running it, but they run out of people, they run out of the usual suspects. That's basically what happened. It's actually more dangerous in this way because the recent policy of the organization is just to be extremely nice and silent. In my neighborhood, the people that tell me good morning and good afternoon is basically more often is the mid-level member I refer to, and every time, for example, he might ask me something that is about a legal issue, he never does it in say a member, this person has a problem, like a friend of mine needs this information. But once it completed this PhD, then I got an offer I could not refuse from the University of Leeds, where I transferred my knowledge of organized crime to organized crime online, which adds another level of complexity, if you allow me to say so, because some of the dynamics I was checking in the criminal organization in Sicily kind of apply and kind of don't in the cybersecurity domain. And in this context, I was following a group of people that were launching DDoS attacks. DDoS attacks are distributed denial of service attacks. Basically, it's an attack where you impair the functioning of server or website by just increasing the traffic load of the server to the point that it cannot operate anymore. And I was following basically a router service provider, someone that sells pre-made DDoS that people can just buy and then launch. And I was interested about the people that were joining the organization, because the more I was reading and studying about them, I found out that there is actually a story, and the story is that you have some beginners, people that buy a trial version of the DDoS just to see how it's like and launch it to their friends or people who are playing computer games online just to piss them off, and possibly leave it there because it's not worth. But the good thing is that it's cheap. It was very cheap, and it was kind of easy to use. So it was
quite successful, as you can see. The majority of people started in this way, but then you have some people that define amateurs because they really understood how the system was working, and they were spending much more money on DDoS attacks and on the softwares. And these were the kind of users that were not just launching attacks to computers, but were, for example, targeting schools, universities, institutions, if you want.
Roberto, a question.
Sure.
So, how do you know if they're beginners or amateurs? How do you know if they're just if it's a zombie computer that was
Sure.
recruited for this DDoS attack, or is it an actual person?
Well, each person that registered had to insert details. So of course it could. Then there is always the issue with this kind of research, isn't it? Because you never know if behind the email address there is an actual person or not. But email address, IPs, and postal address. But this is the amount of people I collected. In some case, most of the people were not using VPNs, actually, which is quite interesting with the...
So those people used Tor to go to the darknet to buy this DDoS software?
Well, I cannot say this yet, but they were using software that was based on a sort of company or website that allowed them to buy them or make a subscription.
So you created it?
I didn't create the software. What it could, it was basically a security agency that was following these people and allowed me to just be behind the computer.
And
taking
they were
notes.
selling the software?
They were not selling the software. Software was sold by a third part, and there was an organization behind it that is actually within this group. And when they took the website and most of these people down, they gave me the data. And then there was a third category of these green ones that I consider professionals, the ones that bought the extremely powerful DDoS to just cause basically mayhem and attack quite large websites. And from a policy and legal perspective, well, you would focus on the professionals and many of the amateurs, and not really on the beginners, because there are so many, and not really, they have a low level of offensivity. However, these are the two categories that most of the time make the news and the statistics in cyber security agendas and research news, because basically they give you the impression that there is a problem that is booming and expanding, while it's just really few people that make the most of it and the others don't. And this is my presentation. I'm currently writing a book about mafia that is going to be out in 2021 for Booklet. And if you have any questions, just feel free to ask about it. So
Sure. Thank you very much,
Thank
Roberto.
you.
Let's do some questions and answers session. I have a few questions, but maybe anyone wants to ask any questions?
I do, but I'm a bit late. Just in terms of what you you were saying, I guess I had two observations and
Yes.
just one for clarification. So would you say, from your experience, that the mafia is incredibly disciplined and structured, like model of business?
In most of those cases, yes.
Yeah. Like it seems highly functioning.
It is,
Yeah.
even if sometimes it doesn't really crash on that.
Yeah.
And there are, for example, situations that look really out of a comedy book. For
Yeah.
example, I was doing in one other trial, they found out that they were wiretapped in the car, and for example, they start singing songs all the time just to communicate with each other. But they were actually, but they were actually revealing to the investigators that they discovered
They know
the
who
car. Yeah.
And my second question, maybe I didn't understand, but you know, you're saying as a barrister, so you, like I was just trying to make the link in terms of how you became their barrister. Like you said, you would go there and they would decide whether or not you would act for them. Is it kind of like our legal aid where, you know, everyone's got a right to a defence, so you're
Yes.
the next lawyer, the duty lawyer that goes along, or how does that work?
So yeah, I did my training as a civil and criminal lawyer.
Yes.
So I was sitting with my Dominus, with my pupil master on trials he was taking, but at the same time I could register for a sort of legal aid, but we have a double system of legal aid in Italy. One for people that cannot afford to have a lawyer, and the other one for people, basically people that no one wants to defend. And these trials most of the times fall in this second category.
Won't you,
Because we cannot afford us in our legal system that someone defends on his own. We will have something like
But if
personal
you go
defense.
down there and they say, we don't want you, like you're too young or you're not experienced or we just don't want you.
Yes.
Yeah.
but wouldn't you expect that the mafia will hire someone for a lot of money because they have a lot of money?
Yes and no. So it really depends on what the trial is about, and this is where it gets also a little complicated and nasty for lawyers as well, because sometimes they feel extremely confident most of the time about their trial position, and they are aware of the fact that when the evidence is presented in this way by the prosecutor, there's nothing much someone can do, but someone has to defend them.
Yes.
And so from this point of view, it is quite easy when someone that is young, in the young professional terms, to start with this kind of trials, if you want to. On the other hand, of course, there have been issues in the past, and actually very recently, of lawyers being killed or that they were forced to suicide, and because the amount of pressure is, of course, very high.
And then my third question was, did your dad get his car fixed back?
Yes.
Do they have bugs in them?
The thing is that you always have to consider not.
Well, it's quite clever strategy though, take the seat, so like you can't drive the
Yes,
car.
and just the seats, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be with in the 90s with Ryan Wilson, you could just take them out and take one in, but they got they evolved with technology.
Any other
Roberto, you mentioned that you wrote a economic thesis. Is that related
Yes.
to mafia? I was just wondering about your findings from an economics perspective, like you know, demand, supply, you know, equilibrium, bliss point. You know, I mean, how did that work? How did you apply those models?
So I did not apply these models because basically my
research question was about finding what the probability, say, starting from the lowest or level to get to the top. But there's a lot of research on the offer and demand of mafia, and one of the most famous experts is Gambetta. This researcher called Gambetta. What basically they say is that there is a demand of mafia that depends on really on the market and the service that is offered. So you can have mafia, for example, waiting on your taxi rank, and this is one of the systems because basically people have to queue and they are getting a service, but it doesn't really matter who your driver is. It matters that he catch your car and take you somewhere. And this is, for example, a system that has been exploited, or in procurements where everyone has to make, for example, an offer, but suddenly you have everyone that is making the same type of offer, and someone that is offering 2 cents less and wins. So it is about basically, I would say, correcting the market and trying to reach an equilibrium on that moment.
Bring it back to equilibrium.
Yes.
Just says, so you start off defending mafia says, and then you've written research about them.
Yes.
Does that cause you worry about your own security, writing research about the mafia?
Not in Sicily. I did something in Mexico that was a little bit more nasty. Not in Sicily because to a degree the person that was the mafia representative in my neighborhood knew who I was, what I was doing, and was fine with that. But you also meet many high members of the mafia that are extremely interested in that, but not from a negative point of view, from a positive point of view, because they actually want to know more about themselves and the structure. There is a book, for example, from a history professor in Naples that apparently is the best sold book about the mafia in Palermo, and it's, I believe, because many mafia members buy it and want to join the organization.
Telling them how their business model actually works, like
Yes,
giving them
exactly.
evidence. Do they have a good reputation or not?
Yes, please.
You just said that the individual who was in charge of your area was okay with you doing this research. Did you
Yes.
actually have to seek his permission to
No,
carry it out?
no.
And if
He knew that I
didn't-
was he knew that I was lawyer doing also research on mafia, but he was.
Do you
totally-
think if he didn't
Like,
like it, it would have affected you carrying out this research? Or would you have done it anyway?
I don't think that he would have created an issue, but just because on a cultural level, it would not have affected the organization, whatever it would have found out. But actually, then I will commercialize this, and maybe it will affect them in the long run.
they might want royalties from you.
Well, I was going to say, if the police did start changing to going and targeting the middle level managers, maybe they would get back to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
there's a
there's
question.
one more
Sorry.
question.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna, do these mafia networks sort of extend internationally, or do they sort of stick more to their own
So,
nations? Because I'm sure there's like the Italian mafia in America, and we
Yes.
have a decent Italian population here in Australia. So
and you have the Italian mafia in Australia as well. There is this researcher called Anna Sergi, Italian as well, but based in Essex, that does a lot of work on Andrangheta in Australia. And it was actually recently 2 years ago near Adelaide, where there was this small village outside Adelaide where basically it was colonized by Andrangheta families, and they started a little bit like if you watch The Godfather Part 3, where you have the businesses that become completely legal and they started building the hospital, the police station, the fire, creating a fire brigade. They have statues everywhere around town, which was quite interesting. But they have many contacts around the world. But one thing, the network is here. The one thing you notice is that actually the people, and you would not see from this one just because I linked it to the investigation, but there are others where you see all the international connections, is that it's still the mid-level members that do the high, the international outreach, if you want to say so. It is very easy between Sicily and the US. There was a very famous investigation called the Pizza Connection in the 80s. That sparked also from that very first trial I told you about. But recently it was with Nigerian gangs, Chinese mafia, and Colombian criminal groups that basically see Sicily as a sort of easy access for drug smuggling into Europe and around Europe. And this is so because in our island and in the south of Italy, you have two of the very biggest ports of entry in Europe. Not as big as, for example, the ones in Netherlands or France, but they're quite sizable, and there's a lot of corruption in these ports, so levels of security is quite low, and it's easier for these people to just smuggle a little bit of
Any other questions? Okay, great. So, Roberto, thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
And okay, let's take a 10 minutes break and then we'll continue. You said that the mafia was interested. Was the police interested in the results?
No, not that much.
No, huh?
It was more the mafia than.
I thought of an idea on those maps things. One of the things, among other, I'm teaching environmental. There's a lot of issues with the route that both animal artifacts and exotic animals are traveling the world. In terms of, there's a lot of mafia, organized crime organizations involved in this, and it's a huge business. It's very lucrative.
It
So
is.
that's something to think about, because one thing. So, one way to do it is to look at the internet and see where people are. But also, one thing they've done there I think it's more South Africa, they've included a chip in, or they were looking at DNA of the ivory or something along these lines that allowed them to follow the route, and that's interesting and important.
There was, at times, Italian investigation in the last couple of years on garbage, on how garbage gets basically disposed more than once in Italy, and then it arrives suddenly in the south of Italy and disappears. And it was a criminal organization involved with that. And it will be interesting to do all the mapping of the organization.
So I didn't get the one with the cybersecurity. I didn't understand. I mean, if you're not the one selling the software, how can you know the details of the people that are?
Sorry, because you get a crawler.
So you created a crawler.
Not me. There is a researcher in Canada.
You created a crawler.
That I didn't put it there. It was the police that put the crawler into the
Software.
website.
Right.
And so who was buying it, the times, how many times they bought it, and which service they were getting, the rest of the structure, because what a crawler does basically gives you a sort of spreadsheet of everything you can visit in the page, and all the parts that as a person, you cannot access in the website, but the admin can.
Right.
Sorry,
Yeah,
that
very,
was
very
not
interesting. I
clear.
think the students really liked it. I mean, I could have asked a lot of other questions, but we'll talk about it.
I mean, I think it was.
Yeah, it was very good.
That's what
Very
I
good.
was
Okay,
Well,
so
thank you.
thank you very much.
No worries, I'll take this.
Sure.
And I'll see you later.
Yeah, sure. Bye.